Hey everyone, Andrew here. Welcome back to part 3 of the 2010 Mazda 3 detailing series. We're going through and cleaning this car up, getting it ready for resale. In last week's episode, we went through the entire interior of the car, got it cleaned up, looking so much better. Check that out if you haven't got a chance to. But in today's episode, we're going to go through washing the exterior of the vehicle. I'll be talking about and showing my processes for going through various different parts of the exterior of the vehicle, from rinsing it, to washing the wheels, to washing the paint, to drying it, to doing the clay bar. So stay tuned, check this out, and let's get into the video. So to kick things off with washing the exterior, obviously we want to get the car wet. So you have two ways you can do this. You can do this with a pressure washer, which is my preferred method, but you can also do it with a regular garden hose if you wish. And this just allows you to go in, spray off a lot of the stuff that's just kind of sitting on the surface. You can blow away a lot of the looser dirt, bird droppings, tree sap, bugs, all that good stuff. And the pressure washer kind of gives you a little extra oomph if you don't have a garden hose. If you do elect to use the pressure washer, be sure you set the end to sort of be more fanned out, like I've got it here in the video. This is a 40-degree tip, I believe. I would avoid using something like the 25 or definitely the 0, because we don't want to just really dig into the surface of the car at any point. If you go with a regular garden hose, feel free to use the jet if you wish on some tougher spots. It's not really going to be strong enough usually to blast through paint or anything like that. While you're doing this, be sure to hit the wheel wells and the wheels really good. Those have a lot of caked on road grime, dirt, all that kind of stuff. So while you have the pressure washer or the hose out, be sure that you can loosen up as much of that kind of stuff as you can. It's just going to make the washing part easier later. Our whole goal with the rinse part of the wash is just to get rid of as much of the dirt as possible with just water, and being completely touchless too besides the water. We're not on there scrubbing or anything like that. We're just using the water to blow away debris. This helps us to ensure that we're touching the paint of our car as little as we can, because any kind of physical touching with a rag, with a mitt, with a scrubber, anything like that, leaves the chance that you're going to leave a little bit of love marks, some scratches, light scratches and swirls, things like that. So by using the rinse and using a pressure washer especially, we can kind of blow away some of the stuff, and that'll save us from having to really scrub later. Now that I've got the surface of the car rinsed off and all the large debris is rinsed away and off of the paint, I actually like to switch gears a little bit and move down to the wheels next. Off camera, I set up my two buckets, a rinse bucket and a wash bucket with Meguiar's Gold Class soap in it. Both buckets have got a grit guard. After the pressure washer rinse that we did initially, these wheels actually weren't just super dirty, but I did decide to go ahead and use some Meguiar's Hot Rims wheel cleaner, and you just kind of spray this on the surface, let it dwell for just a little bit, agitate if the wheels are super dirty, and then rinse off. Really within 30 seconds is kind of what we're aiming for. I wouldn't leave it on there any longer than a minute. And the reason you don't want to let these wheel cleaners dwell is they're actually pretty strong acid-based, and so if you leave them on too long, you may actually get some etching on your rims, and we want to avoid that. While we're still sort of in that dwell time for the wheel cleaner, I like to come in with a detailing brush and just hit the little tight spots that I know are going to be tougher to hit with just soap and a microfiber later. Be sure to get on the lug nuts and things like that. And then I'll go around the surface of the tire with a tire brush. And then after you do that, as long as you work quickly, you should still be within that dwell time. And then I just go ahead and rinse the entire thing off. And then we can go into spot cleaning with the same tools, a microfiber, a brush, the tire brush if needed again, and then like a wheel woolly or a wheel brush. These wheels actually weren't super terrible after just the wheel cleaner alone. I probably could have gone ahead and moved on here, but I did notice just a little bit in some of the corners around the spokes, and then the wheel barrels were still pretty dirty, and back behind the spokes as well. So I come in with my Meguiar's Gold Class wash bucket and put a little bit of soap onto the barrel brush, and I just start to work behind the spokes a little bit, and you can see some of the dirt coming off there. With the barrels as clean as I could get them with my brush, I just come in and do another little final wipe with the microfiber and the detailing brush just to make sure that I got all of the residual wheel cleaner and any dirt that may have come out with the wheel brush. Again, like I said earlier, these wheels are already actually pretty clean. This step might have been overkill, but I just wanted to go ahead and be really just double sure that I got them as clean as I could. At this point on the driver's side front wheel, I realized that I had not done the wheel well yet. Ideally, I like to do these before I do the wheel itself, the facing of the wheel, because sometimes when you're doing these wheel wells, you'll get splatter or splash or something, and it kind of ruins the work you just did on the face of the wheel. So start with the wheel well, don't do it like I did here. It's not the end of the world if you kind of do them out of order. You just may have to rinse the wheel face again, depending on what kind of dirt comes off the wheel well. But in order to do these wheel wells, I just use some of that super clean degreaser. I found that it really likes to cut through all of the road grime, tar, dirt, and all that kind of stuff on the wheel wells. Just make sure you avoid overspray onto your paint and stuff like that. Be careful where you're spraying it. Make sure it stays in the wheel well itself. And then once that's saturated and kind of dwelled a second, I'll come in with a brush or just a really nasty microfiber or something like that and begin to agitate and lift that dirt away. Once you got everything scrubbed, just come back in, rinse everything away with the hose, and then you're ready to continue this process with all of the other wheels around the car. After I complete all of the other wheels, I also take a look at some of the lower surfaces on the car. Any of that like sort of plastic trim that's around like the rocker panels, or the back bumper, the front bumper, the exhaust tip, really low places like that. If they have like caked on grime, I'll give them a little pass with my wheel wash water and either a microfiber or a soft bristle brush, something like that. I avoid painted surfaces with this water that we've used to clean wheels, just because we don't want to run any of those wheel contaminants over the paint, because that carries a higher likelihood that you're going to swirl and scratch. But for things like plastic trim and exhaust tips, things that are less susceptible to scratching, I usually find that it's okay to kind of bust off any of that extra road grime with the wheel wash soap while I've got it. Then, once all of that's done, if you did it, go ahead and dump out your 2 buckets and completely rinse them and make sure they're nice and clean before we move on to cleaning painted surfaces. Just refill another rinse bucket, refill another wash bucket, and you're good to go. After I got the wheels clean, I came in with the pressure washer and a foam cannon with Meguiar's Gold Class in it. It's diluted 5-to-1, and I just like to foam the entire vehicle, get a nice lather built up on it, and then that kind of dwells, and then as that drips down the vehicle, it takes even more of the dirt and contaminants off of the car. And also, it's just a ton of fun. I mean, who doesn't like foaming a vehicle? It's just something super satisfying about it. If you don't have access to a foam cannon or a pressure washer, don't worry about it. I mean, this step is optional. I enjoy it. I think it's fun, and it does serve a purpose, but you can definitely get by with just a standard 2-bucket wash method. In fact, you can see in my video here, I've got my 2 buckets ready to go, mixed up fresh, so no wheel contaminants, anything like that in it, and we're going to use that for the next step. For the 2-bucket wash method, the goal is to minimize scratching or marring of the paint as much as we possibly can, while also cleaning the vehicle. So in order to do this, I have my 2 buckets, obviously both have got grit guards in them, and then I'm using a chenille wash sponge with a bug scrubber backing on it. And I'll kind of switch between the two depending on what the surface of the vehicle is needing. For the 2-bucket hand wash method, I work top to bottom, and that just keeps you from recontaminating surfaces lower on the car if you've already cleaned them. If, let's say, you have to go back and wash the top, you're not running dirt back down the side of the vehicle. As for what you use to actually touch and wash the vehicle, there's a plethora of different choices. I like using these little microfiber chenille sponge things that have got the little bug scrubber on the back, but you can use a nice plush microfiber towel or one of those like glove mitt things. There's a lot of different choices, but whatever you use, the goal here with the actual contact on the vehicle is to use just as light a pressure as you can. We're not going in here and we're not really grinding and rubbing and scrubbing the paint. I mean, we're just using enough pressure to basically keep the sponge in contact with the car. After I've washed about a panel or so, it just kind of depends on how clogged up your microfiber mitt is getting. You come back in and you rinse against the grit guard in your rinse bucket, and then put it into your wash bucket, and then rub that against the grit guard in the bottom of the wash bucket, fill up with more soap, and then you're ready to go back and hit the next panel. And you just kind of repeat this process all across the car, again, top down, using as light a pressure as you can until you get everything wiped down and as clean as you can get it. For the more intricate and like tighter areas on the car, like logos and badges and grills and door handles, I'll come in with a detailing brush and same method, just rinse against the grit guard, rinse against the grit guard in the soap bucket, add some more soap, and then go in and wash. And, you know, again, use the lightest pressure as you can so we're not risking swirling out the paint or anything, but also still allowing you to kind of get into those tight areas and brush the dirt away. With this car in particular, there was still some bug splatter and bug guts left on the front of the car after using the 2-bucket wash method with the wash mitt. A neat little trick I've found to get some of these remaining bug guts off fairly gently is to take a used dryer sheet and just use your wash water that you have left in your bucket, and then use that as kind of like a bug net to pull off those remaining bug guts. It works pretty well. It's fairly gentle on the paint, but I would still be careful to make sure, especially if you're having to scrub in a spot, make sure you're not going to be getting any kind of scratching or swirling while you do this. The bug guts on the front of the car can be especially hard to get off, especially if you haven't washed the car in a long time or it's not sealed. They're going to be stuck on there, cooked on there, baked on there. So just take your time, be patient, get off what you can without being super, super aggressive. And sometimes once you wash the bug guts off, it'll still look like a little bug splatter on the front of the car. That actually happened on this one. And it was actually the clear coat on the bumper had been etched. And there was no way I could remove that because it wasn't actually something stuck on the paint. It was actually sort of it was a paint defect, you know, it's an etching in the paint. So there was no way to scrub that off. That was gonna have to be paint corrected later. Once I got the entirety of the vehicle wiped down and cleaned with the soap, I came in with the pressure washer here and just rinsed away that residual soap and dirt to make sure we were nice and clean. And of course you can do this with a pressure washer or the regular garden hose, whichever you have access to is fine. We just want to rinse all of the remaining stuff away. After I got the car rinsed, I actually went ahead and shot video of 2 different ways to dry the car here. So one method is to use like compressed air or a leaf blower, basically use air to dry the car. And this method is really good if you really want to minimize touching the paint, which is always a good idea. With this car in particular, it was having a hard time moving all of the water off of the surface. So I actually ended up moving to using a drying towel with some Optimum No Rinse mixed in a spray bottle as a drying aid, just to kind of help lubricate the surface of the car and help make sure that that drying towel was not going to leave any slight scratches or swirls, anything like that. With the vehicle fully dried, my final step for the exterior wash of this Mazda was to actually come in and use clay on the surface to remove embedded contaminants. Even after washing your car with the 2-bucket method with the wash mitt, there's going to be little particles of stuff like, you know, brake dust or rocks or, you know, industrial fallout, sap, things like that, that the wash mitt's just not going to pull off with the light pressure we need to use while using it. So, because of this, we turn to the clay bar, which is actually really well suited for this purpose. To use clay, just knead it in your fingers for a little bit like you saw me doing, and then spray down your car with your preferred lubricant. This is Optimum No Rinse. With the clay itself and the car's paint both lubricated, you just come in and lightly do passes with the clay, and you'll feel it as it begins to catch and remove those contaminants. And you can feel a difference once you start to really get that paint clean. The clay will glide really smoothly through the lubricant that you sprayed on there, and that's when you can get a really good feeling for once you've got that panel clean. As you're running the clay over the painted surfaces of the car, eventually it's going to start to fill up with the contaminants that it's lifting out of the paint. And you'll be able to see that on the bottom of the clay. And once this happens, what you'll want to do is just kind of fold the clay over a few times, roll it back around in your fingers, and really just get a nice clean surface on the clay again. And then you can go back to work on the panel. And the reason we do this is because we want to avoid those contaminants that we pulled out with the clay. We want to avoid running that over and over and over on the paint, swirling it and scratching it more than we need to. Some of you may be wondering why I'm doing the clay bar portion of the exterior wash after I already dried the vehicle. And the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to minimize water spotting as much as I possibly could. If it was a cooler temperature outside, or if I was indoors, say in like a shop or a garage, I would probably do the clay bar step after I did my wash with the wash mitt before the final rinse. However, since I'm washing the exterior of this vehicle outdoors in Texas summertime heat, it's like 100+ degrees, it would be really difficult for me to leave the car wet and then start claying a panel without those panels that I left wet, just the water evaporating off almost instantly and leaving water spots. So because of that, I go ahead and I dry the entire vehicle, and then I went in and clayed. And then using the Optimum No Rinse as a clay lube, that allows me to just like wipe down the area that I just clayed with a microfiber. I get it dry, it's streak free, and you don't have to do a traditional rinse with a hose. I found that this method works really well for detailing in Texas heat. I just have footage here of claying the rear quarter panel on the vehicle, but I followed this process across the entirety of the car and got everything as contaminant free as I could. Besides using the clay itself to kind of feel when the contaminants have come out, you can also use like a nitrile glove like I'm wearing here and just kind of gently run your hand over the surface, or a plastic baggie. And if you're running your hand behind that bag or glove over the surface and then you're not really feeling any grit, then you've got the surface clean and it's ready for paint correction or sealing. Okay, that wraps up part 3 of the Mazda detail series here. We got the exterior nice and washed, and it is ready for paint correction and sealing and all that good stuff. There was rain in the forecast, so in the next episode, I'm going to actually have it in the garage, as you will see. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you have not seen the other parts and are looking forward to seeing part 4 and 5. Those will be coming up real soon. I appreciate you guys watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next videos.